You'd think after seeing the Red Sea split, I mean, come on, the plagues, everything that happened in Egypt, the Israelites would be, like, totally devoted right there.
It's kind of amazing how quickly they seem to forget all that awe.
Right.
And that's what we're looking at today, that whole golden calf thing.
Yeah.
It happened so fast after they were freed and got those super important laws, like their agreement with God.
Yeah, a huge deal. And that's why we're diving into this Lesson 29, the Golden Calf Rebellion thing.
Right.
To figure out why they rebelled and why it still matters to us today.
Yeah.
Like, what's the big takeaway here?
Yeah, so you don't have to read through everything yourself.
Exactly.
And I think if we look at the bigger picture, it shows us how hard it is to stick with a new belief.
Yeah.
Especially when it's not something you can see.
Totally. So let's back up a bit. We're talking post-Exodus. They've seen miracles. They get the 10 Commandments. Then what? What starts this whole rebellion thing?
Well, Moses goes back up Mount Sinai to get the instructions for building the tabernacle, the place where they'd go for forgiveness and to worship the right way.
So it's like getting the blueprints for their spiritual life.
Yeah.
But down below, it's just Moses is gone.
Right, and they have to wait.
So they're waiting and wait.
And the text really emphasizes that the time felt long to them.
I bet.
Being in that uncertain place probably made them feel abandoned.
Makes sense. And when people feel lost and uncertain, that's when the complaining starts, right?
It does. They go to Aaron, Moses' brother, and it's almost like they're desperate.
We need answers now, kind of thing.
Exactly. They say, make us gods who can lead us. We don't even know what happened to Moses, the guy who brought us out of Egypt.
Wow, so they're looking for something more concrete to lead them.
Exactly. They want something they can actually see. It's a good reminder that even after incredible experiences, it's easy to be swayed by what everyone else is doing. I mean, we see that all the time, even now, in different ways.
That's so true. And instead of, I don't know, calming them down or something, Aaron's like, okay, everyone give me your gold rings.
Right.
Kind of a strange response, isn't it?
It is. And he asks for gold from everyone, the wives, kids, everyone.
So it becomes like a group effort.
Yeah, maybe he thought if everyone's involved, it won't be so bad, or they'll forget about it.
Delay the inevitable.
Yeah, something like that.
But then he uses a graving tool, which apparently means something like a young bull, and suddenly everyone's anxieties just vanish.
Like a magic trick. They even declare, these are your gods, Israel, the ones who rescued you from Egypt.
Seriously. After all those miracles, they're giving credit to this calf statue.
It's why it's like they totally forgot who was actually responsible.
And then, get this, Aaron builds an altar and says, let's have a feast to the Lord tomorrow. It's like he's trying to combine what they want with their supposed faith.
It makes you wonder about Aaron. Like, was he just caving under pressure? Or did he think he could somehow twist this idol worship into something for the Lord? The text doesn't really say, but he definitely enabled this huge rebellion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this feast wasn't some quiet religious thing either. The text says they rose up to play, which sounds a lot like
Oh, yeah.
a wild party.
It definitely wasn't a prayer meeting.
Not exactly the behavior you'd expect after, getting a whole set of moral guidelines.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just some random party. It was a direct contradiction to those laws they had just received, right?
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the big question. Which commandments did they break?
Well, it wasn't just about the statue. It was a complete rejection of their agreement with God.
Right.
And the broken commandments are pretty obvious. Making and worshiping that calf was a huge violation of the first one. Worship only the Lord God.
And then the second one is?
Don't make or worship idols.
I mean, a golden calf pretty much sums that up.
It's like the poster child for that commandment.
Totally. And the text gives some possible reasons for this huge shift. One idea is polytheism, which is basically believing in many gods. That makes sense given their history in Egypt.
Yeah, bull worship was huge in those pagan religions. So that image of a young bull would have been familiar, maybe even comforting to them.
Right, like a blast from the past.
Exactly. It's like those old ways of worshiping were still lurking under the surface.
And then there's syncretism, which is basically trying to blend different religions, like Aaron saying it's a feast to the Lord, but with a golden calf in the middle of it.
It's like he's trying to have it both ways. And it's interesting, the text uses that word Elohim, which can be plural for God. They say, make us gods, and Aaron says, these are your gods, Israel.
So are they talking about multiple gods or just Yahweh?
That's the thing. It's not super clear. Elohim can refer to the one true God, but the way Aaron uses it with a plural verb and saying these It really seems like he means more than one God. But then he also says, these gods brought them out of Egypt, which was Yahweh. It's all very mixed up, which shows how confused they were about this whole one God idea.
400 years in Egypt. It's hard to just switch mindsets like that. But God, up on Mount Sinai, sees all this going on, and he's not exactly thrilled.
Nope. He tells Moses, go down there, your people, the ones you brought out of Egypt. They've messed up big time. They've turned away from what I commanded. They made a calf, worshipped it, sacrificed to it, and even said, these are the gods who saved you from Egypt.
There's definitely a tone of, disappointment there.
Yeah, and a lot of hurt, I think.
For sure. And Moses comes down the mountain, sees this whole scene, and just smashes those tablets of the law.
Such a powerful image.
Totally. It's like their covenant is shattered.
Yeah, and he's furious. He burns the calf, grinds it up, throws the powder in the water, and makes them drink it.
Whoa, forcing them to swallow their mistake. Literally.
It's a pretty dramatic way of saying, see what you've done.
No kidding. And then he confronts Aaron, who gives the lamest excuse ever. The people are bad, so I threw some gold in the fire, and poof, out came a calf.
It wasn't me!
Right, come on.
It's so weak, like he doesn't want to admit his part in this, but Moses isn't buying it. He knows this is a huge sin.
And in the middle of all this mess, Moses steps up as that crucial mediator.
He goes back up to the Lord to try to make things right.
He's like the ultimate go-between.
Totally. And his plea to God is intense. He even says, forgive them, or if you won't, then erase me from your book.
He's willing to sacrifice himself for them.
That's some serious leadership, offering his own place with God to save them.
Incredible. But God doesn't just say, oh, okay, forgiven.
No, there are consequences. He says, whoever sinned, I'll erase them from my book.
So everyone's accountable for their actions.
Exactly. It's not a blanket pardon. But God still promises to lead them, though he does mention there will be punishment later on, and there's a plague that follows soon after.
Right. So actions have consequences. And the text actually lays out the steps of their sin, like how it all went down.
Yeah, it's like a 5-stage process. 1, they abandon God's commands. 2, they make the calf. 3, they worship it. 4, they sacrifice to it. And finally, they say this calf is what saved them from Egypt.
Each step takes them further and further away from God.
It's a downward spiral, each step making things worse.
And this story really shows us some key theological ideas.
Like the importance of a mediator, like Moses, and the whole concept of atonement, making things right after you've done wrong.
Yeah, and it points to something bigger, right?
Definitely. It foreshadows the need for an even greater mediator between God and humanity.
So let's think about why they did this. Why would they turn away from God so quickly after all he'd done for them?
Well, there's peer pressure. When everyone's doing something, especially when there's no clear leader, it's hard to resist.
Like going along with the crowd.
Exactly. It happens all the time, even today. And maybe they were romanticizing the past, forgetting how bad things were in Egypt.
Focusing on the good old days.
Right. Maybe the wilderness felt too tough, too unknown.
So they missed what they knew, even if it wasn't that great.
Exactly. And let's not forget their old beliefs. They spent 400 years in Egypt, so those ideas about gods and how to worship would have been ingrained.
Hard to just shake that off.
Definitely. And maybe they were disappointed with their new life. Following God's laws can be tough.
It's not always easy, that's for sure.
And the future was uncertain. Maybe they were questioning their choices.
Makes sense.
And we also have to consider the difference between something you can see and touch and something you can't. The God of Israel was invisible, but they were used to all those statues in Egypt.
So in a moment of fear, and with Moses gone, that golden calf gave them something concrete to focus on.
Something they felt they could control. It's a natural human reaction to want something tangible to hold on to when things get rough.
Totally. So back to Moses as mediator. We talked about how he offered to take their punishment.
Right. He was willing to be erased from God's book, to die for them.
Like a substitute, taking their place.
Exactly, like the Passover lamb that was sacrificed. But God says no.
Why would he refuse such a selfless offer?
Well, the text gives a few hints. Later in Scripture, it's clear that we're each responsible for our own sins. You can't just have someone else take the blame.
So one person can't just erase the sins of a whole nation.
It's a really complex question, but that seems to be part of it. Plus, God hates human sacrifice.
Right, that's a big no-no.
So even though God doesn't accept Moses' offer, he also doesn't destroy the entire nation. There's this balance between justice and his plan.
He doesn't let them completely off the hook, but he's still committed to them.
Exactly. He says they'll face consequences later, which shows his justice. But he also keeps his promise to lead them to the promised land, showing his mercy. It's a complicated picture of God's character, isn't it?
It really is. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the golden calf, what are the big takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first, the Israelites messed up really quickly and really badly. It happened right after all those miracles and God giving them his law.
It shows that humans can have huge faith one minute and then completely abandon it the next.
Exactly. And it shows how hard it is to trust a God you can't see and how tempting it is to go back to old ways, even if they're not good for you.
Totally. And the fact that they broke the first two commandments is a big deal. It shows how important it is to be completely devoted to God and reject any form of idolatry.
Doesn't matter if it's an ancient statue or something we worship today, it's still a problem.
And we can't forget about Moses. He's the ultimate mediator, standing in the gap for the people.
His willingness to die for them shows what true leadership and love look like.
And finally, this story shows us how God balances justice and mercy. He doesn't ignore sin, but he doesn't give up on us either.
It's a good reminder that God is both just and merciful. Which leads us to a final question for you to think about. What are the golden calves in our lives today?
Ooh, good question.
What are the things we put before God, the things we trust in instead of him?
Could be possessions, beliefs, even messed up ways of worshiping.
Exactly. What happens when we mix true faith with other stuff, or when we choose comfort over what's actually true? It's an old story, but it's still relevant because humans haven't changed that much. We're still prone to wander.
So true. Thanks for joining us today.
It was my pleasure.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.